Chapter 4. The Castle Vision. The Lord had just corrected me of errors in my faith, showing me that my faith should stand in His power and not in my own. And I received this word from the Lord: if you will give to me your heart, then I'll make it beautiful in my sight. I really did not know what work the Lord wanted to do in my heart to make it beautiful in His sight, but I just trusted the Lord and started asking Him to do whatever He desired to do to make my heart pleasing to Him. I was praying one morning when the Lord spoke to me, and again He said, "Mitt, did you not know that I do not desire anything in the heart of my bride other than that which you desire to have in the heart of your bride? Just as you, I desire for my bride to be faithful and truthful with me, that she trusts me, honors me, believes on me, be honest and loyal to me, that she be willing to be my bride, and that she loves me with all of her heart, mind, and all of her soul." I then realized that the Lord had just revealed to me the nature of the heart that is beautiful in His sight, and the issues of this beautiful heart are truth, honesty, trust, belief, faithfulness, loyalty, honor, willingness, sincerity, and love. At that moment, I could only imagine how great such a relationship would be after the Lord had perfected all of these principles in me. I also remembered that which is written that says that God does not look for beauty in the outward appearances of men, but in the heart. Lord, make my heart beautiful in your sight. And the Lord gave me a vision where I saw two R's, R. And my first thought was that the Lord was going to show me something about a railroad. The Lord then said, "Today I am giving you a choice between religion or relationship. I did not come into this world to bring religion, but I did come to restore a relationship between father and son." I truly realized then that this work is not really about religion, but it is all about a people, a bride that God is preparing to spend all of eternity with by beautifying their hearts. The Lord then allowed for me to understand that all of these issues of the heart, they are the principles that are needful and necessary for the relationship, the communication, the friendship, and the marriage that the Lord desires to have with each one of us. It was then that I understood why Satan attacks the church with the weapons of lies that do nothing but sow unbelief, distrust, pride, unwillingness, rebellion, fear, whoredom, doubts, as well as all of the lies of self-righteousness. For these are the very principles that will break up any relationship. My eyes were also open to see how the hypocrites of religion are able to break up this relationship that the Father desires to have with His people. They dictate that a man should keep his focus on himself, to try to make himself to be the best Christian that he can make of himself, to be which does not allow for men to draw near to God, asking for Him to make them to be His children. It was then that I finally felt like I understood why I had felt so far from God, when I had tried to play act my Christianity through my best efforts and good intentions. What else needed to be said but, "Lord, create in me a new heart, the heart of your bride"? I really had no clue as to how the Lord was going to create this new heart in me, and I was wondering what I might need to be doing to allow for Him to finish this work that He has started in me. I was riding down the interstate late one afternoon when the Lord gave this vision to me. I saw a castle that was an exact replica of your typical medieval castle, except that this castle was much, much smaller. Its walls were only about 10 feet high and 10 feet long. Yet it still somehow was able to possess all of the intricate features that you would expect to find on one of those large castles in England. It was a beautiful castle that seemed so alive with activity, and there were banners and tapestries and linen curtains everywhere that were flapping in the winds. I then observed that each wall had a door, and on both sides of each door was a guard. Each guard was completely outfitted with a full suit of armor from head to toe. They were exactly fashioned in the same armor as the castle guards in medieval times had. Each guard was holding in one hand a sword, and in the other hand he was holding a battle axe that was mounted on the end of an 8-foot long staff. I was able to observe this castle for quite some time. I was amazed at how a castle so small could have all of the details of much larger castles. There did not seem to be any detail missing. Even with all of its beauty and glory, the thing that still stood out the most to me was, why would a castle so small need to be guarded with these 8 men? So I then asked, "Lord, what is in this castle that it needs to be so heavily guarded?" The Lord answered, "Your righteousness, for everything that your heart believes in and trusts to be true and right. For all that which a man treasures in his heart is rooted and grounded in those things that he believes in and trusts. Such things as your own religion, will, opinions, abilities, money, loyalties, doctrines, your own understanding, politics, traditions, self-respect, feelings and emotions, self-confidence, relationships, job, name, interpretation of the scriptures, judgments of other men, as well as of your own judgments of what you believe to be good and evil, right and wrong, and truth and lies. These are the precious treasures that every man values in his heart, and he will guard them above all things, even with his life. Does not every man protect those things that he values to be precious to him? Do you not know that every man lives his entire life according to the things that he believes to be right and true? It is this standard that men use to set the course of their lives. Would a man treasure anything other than that which his heart trusts to be right and true? Do not all men treasure these same things? Do not all men treasure those things that they accomplish for themselves? Do not all men treasure their own reputations, that is, the name that they make for themselves? Do not all men believe and trust that the image that they have of God is that right and true image? Do not all men treasure the judgment of their own decisions and counsels? Do not all men treasure their own opinions, that which they have formed for themselves? Do not all men treasure their judgments and opinions of other men? Is it not written that every way of man, or rather every decision or judgment that a man makes, seems right in his own eyes? Do not men believe and trust things to be right and true, that agree with their own consciousness or their natural senses? Is it that which is natural that is right and true, or is it that which is spiritual that is right and true? Is it not also written that the Lord, he who looks on the hearts of men, that he sees that there are none who are right? Who then is blind in their seeing, man on earth or the Lord God above? It was at that moment that the word of righteousness took on a much broader definition for me, going far beyond that which I had only associated with religion, but to be that which reaches into every part of man's life, defining for him how he should live his life. Then I asked, Lord, what then do these castle guards represent? The Lord answered and said, your pride. Pride is your personal bodyguard that is always ready to defend and protect all things that your heart treasures to be right and true. These guards of pride will count all to be adversaries and enemies that oppose or contradict any of those things that the heart treasures to be right and true. When any counsel or correction or word or instruction, deed or any opinion is heard that opposes or contradicts that which is believed to be right and true, then pride will come forth to fight against it as an enemy that is trying to overthrow that which has been trusted and believed in. Pride will either seek to defend and protect your treasures by either closing the door of your ears so that you will not hear, or by hardening your heart so that you will not believe, or by arguing against, or by scoffing, or by making light of, or by contending with, or by mocking, or getting offended, or by fighting with. From where comes all of your arguments, divisions, anger, offenses, divorces, disagreements, hatred, and malice, unforgiveness, dissolved friendships, revenge, strivings, fightings, as well as all of the wounds in your heart feelings, except from the words spoken that transgress that which you have treasured to be right and true? Does not the world say, it is the principle of the matter? The principle is what you think is right and true. You should always fight against all that which your heart treasures to be right and true. All these things will pride do to defend and protect that which has been believed on to be right and true. All this will a man do to keep from suffering any loss to that which his heart treasures. Now do you see and understand why the castle of your heart needs to be so heavily guarded, to save the righteousness that you live your life according to? Do you see how well your pride has equipped itself so that it may defend and protect your life? Pride takes great pleasure in the exalting and glorifying itself in all that it believes to be right and true. Pride is that spirit that only loves the entity of self, and it hates all things that are opposed to self. Pride works feverishly to keep self protected from all things that would bring harm or injury, or defense or offense or any kind of blemish to its self-image. Pride is only conscious of self, and is always mindful of those things which it appears to consider beneficial to self. Anything that pride sees or hears that is beneficial or pleasing to self, or that seems to satisfy any of the desires of self, then it will gladly open the door to the castle of your heart and allow its entrance in, says the Lord. If it sees or hears anything that agrees with that which your heart treasures, then it shall also gladly allow entrance also. If pride sees or hears anything that agrees with its feelings, or with its emotions, or with its soul desires, then it shall be esteemed as a friend, and it shall be allowed to enter into the precious treasury of your heart. So do you see that by pride, anything that agrees with self, it shall be called a friend and allowed entrance in, while anything that opposes or disagrees with self shall be called an enemy and an adversary. Pride only loves for self to be in control, and it always resists in submitting itself to any authority or power, flesh or spirit, or even God himself. These guards of pride will also allow entrance to those things which seem to be able to provide self with a sense of security, power, strength, authority, or with any ability that will profit or help self. It is by pride that a man will even make himself to be Lord and God over his own Christianity. Pride only desires for self to be in control over all of the circumstances and situations that may arise. These proud guards will also swing the doors of your castle wide open, so as to allow in the gifts of praise, honor, esteem, respect, glory to enter in that comes to exalt self. Did you not know that there is no way easier for an enemy and an adversary to enter into the castle of your heart than by bringing with him the gifts of flattery, especially those lying words that exalt a man for his best efforts and his good intentions? Oh, Mr. Christian, what a big, beautiful house you have, says the wolf, dressed in sheep's clothing. Pride only loves the beauty of its own castle, and it will always be envious and jealous of another man's castle when it appears to be bigger or more prosperous or more beautiful than its own. Can you now see the purpose of pride? It is pride that seeks to guard and protect the treasures of your own righteousness. Wow, this is really good. After I had meditated on these words, I then asked, Lord, do these castle walls represent anything that you want me to know about? The Lord then answered and said, these are the walls of self-justification. It is through the work of self-justification that a man is able to make all things to be right that he desires to have as part of his life. There is no desire that burns greater in the hearts of men than the desire to be right in all that he does, all that he thinks, and all that he speaks. Therefore, there is no place in the heart that is any busier than in the workshop that cunningly crafts out the works of self-justification. It is through these works that a man is able to make all of his ways, his decisions, his works and efforts, reasons, religion, lusts, desires, relationships, opinions, politics, judgments, traditions, emotions, feelings, excuses, and all of the blame that he places elsewhere to be right and true in his own eyes. I told you in my word that your thoughts are not my thoughts. This is the idolatry of natural man, to make self to be righteous, even more righteous than God. The more that he is able to make right and true, the more of self there will be to esteem, honor, respect, praise, and to glorify. Now, do you see how once a thing has been justified, then becomes that which is believed on and trusted in to be right and true? Once a thing is believed on and trusted in to be right and true, then shall it be stored with all of the other treasures in the heart. Do you now see and understand what pride defends and protects, and what is hiding behind the walls of self-justification? For as pride loves self, so also does self-justification love being right. What could possibly have a stronger hold over a man's heart and over his thinking than those things which he has justified to be right and believed on to be true? In the natural realm, the works of self-justification seem like that which is right and true. The Lord continued, does not my word testify that I, the Lord your God, see that the heart of man is deceitful above all things? Is there anything that can be more deceitful than for a man to have the ability in his heart to take that which is wrong or that which is false or that which is evil, and then through the works of self-justification he is able to make his decisions or his judgments or his opinions or his deeds or his words to appear as that which seems right or true or good? Then the Lord said this, Mitt, if you can understand the deceitfulness of self-justification, then you will be able to understand all of the power that Satan uses to deceive the hearts of all men. When the lies of Satan and the wisdom of man are joined together, then comes forth the illusions of self-justification that seems real and true. It is in these illusions that makes wrong every way that seems right to man. It is these illusions that makes lies to appear as the truth, that makes the works of iniquity to appear as righteousness, and that make darkness to appear as the light. Satan speaks the lies that the wisdom of man desires to hear. It is this wisdom that then goes to work to justify all of his lies. Has not my word instructed you not to be wise in your own eyes? Have I not said that I will freely and liberally give my wisdom to whoever liked it? Do not men feel comfortable and justified in their own reasonings and excuses? Have you seen any shame in the heart of a man that thinks that he is right in what he believes and trusts in? Have you seen ungodly sorrows in the hearts and minds of those who delight in the works of their own righteousness? This is the power of darkness, the power that deceives men into believing that things are as they appear in the sight of men. This is also the lie that says, if it is right in my sight, then surely it must be right in the sight of God. You know that it is written that when I came into this world, my own people could not see any beauty in me that they should desire for themselves. Is it also written that those who love to justify themselves then rejected, despised, blasphemed, scorned, and hated me so much that they spit on me, mocked me, tortured me, and crucified me? Is your righteousness so precious to you that you would also reject me? Did they not crucify me for the sake of self-preservation, so that they could hold fast to their treasured possessions? Would you reject me if I do not honor you, or praise you, or glorify you, or flatter you so as not to contribute to the beauty of your own castle? Are you going to be like many who I have called, but then they make light of their calling because of their ignorance of my calling? Have I not called all of you to come into the righteousness of abundant life? I see all of those illusions that disguise and fashion themselves with the appearance of righteousness. I see all those things which are hidden in the dark places of a man's heart and mind that he does not want to be made known. I do not look on the appearance of the castle of your heart, but I look deep into the castle to see that which you treasure. The castle that you see, this is how you see the castle of your heart, all arrayed in the beauty of your own goodness and decked out in your own righteousness. And the Lord asked, Mitt, would you allow for me to show you how I see your castle? The truth about that which some of those things your heart has been treasuring? Then immediately froze for a moment, fearful that if the Lord had to ask me such a question, then it could only mean that he did not see the beauty and splendor of my castle as I did. Even so, I knew from past experiences that the Lord has never brought anything into the light that he was not ready to change or redeem with his spirit. I also knew from my past experiences with him that everything that the Lord has ever brought into the light for me, that which was once treasured in my eyes, I would certainly see it to be the foolishness or the vanity that he saw it to be. I remembered how I had treasured my own righteous works until the Lord told me that it is his righteous works that are to accompany my faith. All of the works that he had done for me since have simply become awesome. And there was one more thing that I remembered. I've come to learn that when the Lord comes to correct or to change something within me, then he does it not by punishment, but by his spirit. His spirit brings forth that good life. In fact, because of all of his works have been such a blessing to me, it has allowed for him to win my trust, my loyalty, faith, belief, and love. I then gave him permission to open my eyes so that I could see the castle of my heart as he saw it. Suddenly, my eyes were open, and what I saw did not at all resemble the castle that he has previously seen, but rather it looked like one of the most terrifying haunted castles that I have ever seen, whether in a movie or on a TV show or any that I have seen pictured in a book. There were no banners or tapestries or linen curtains blowing in the wind, and neither did I see any beautiful or lively colors anywhere in this castle. All of the rooms were filled with darkness inside, and it looked as though the entire castle was completely void of life. This castle had none of the glory as I had seen in the first castle. In fact, it was as if this castle was only a habitation of decay, death, and darkness. I then saw different kinds of dark spirits floating around as though they were ghosts. They just seemed to freely drift in and out of the windows and the broken down doors. This entire castle appeared to be in a total state of disrepair and decay and neglect. I was really shocked to see this haunted castle because I really had not been expecting to see anything like this. The vision of this haunted castle really took me by surprise. I then asked, Lord, is this some kind of sin that may have been hidden in my heart? Is this truly how you see my heart, because this haunted castle is so contrary to how I see my heart? Then the Lord said, if you have believed my word, then you would know that what I am showing you is true. Do not be afraid of what you see, because the grace of my love always covers you. My grace is always with you. Is it not written that there's none who is righteous in the sight of God? Is it not also written that there are none who are good in the sight of God? I knew that these words were true, but I had never really seen why they were written. I then answered, Yes, Lord, but what are the things within me that are haunting my castle? The Lord answered, The spirit of fear. And the Lord began to open my eyes so that I could see that all these ghost-like spirits that I had seen drifting around were nothing but spirits of fear. And the Lord said, All that which has been haunting your castle are these spirits of fear that have been haunting you in your own thoughts. This is the death that rules over the thoughts of the carnal mind. Then the Lord opened my eyes to see that all of these ghosts were spirits of fear, and they all had different natures. I then saw that there were names written across each one's chest that identified exactly what the nature of fear that fearful spirit was. These are just a few of the names of these spirits that I saw: the fear of dying, the fear of man, fear of not being in control, the fear of loss, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of being judged by others, the fear of suffering, the fear of hearing the truth, the fear of insecurity, the fear of not being right, the fear of getting sick, the fear of failure, the fear of being different, the fear of abuse, the fear of poverty, the fear of being accused, the fear of heights, the fear of being used by others, the fear of not being able to justify mistakes or faults, the fear of losing, the fear of adversity, the fear of appearing foolish, the fear of shame, the fear of not measuring up, the fear of not understanding, the fear of the future, the fear of being deceived, the fear of the loss of possessions, the fear of growing old, the fear of being embarrassed, the fear of the loss of a job, the fear of being condemned, the fear of being late, the fear of not being accepted, the fear of change, the fear of being left out, the fear of weaknesses or sins being exposed, the fear that you will not get your will, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what others think, the fear of being asked to do something that you cannot possibly do, the fear of failing health, and the fears that one has for the safety and security of his children, or his family, or his friends, or for his brethren. I perceived that I was seeing one spirit of fear, but that this one spirit had a legion of different personalities. As haunting as these groups of fears were, it was the next group of haunting spirits that really frightened me. These were the spirits whose only nature and purpose for being was to try and haunt us in our relationship, communion, and fellowship with God. These were those spirits that by nature are fearful to believe God, fearful that God has lied to them, fearful to draw near to God, fearful to be corrected, fearful to trust God, fearful to confess sins, fearful to ask anything of God, fearful that God will not heal, fearful that God will not forgive, fearful that God will not be where he would be when he is needed, fearful that God will not answer that which is asked of him, fearful of lack or coming up short, fearful of being persecuted for the name of Christ, fearful that God does not care, fearful because of his ignorance of God, fearful to surrender all to God, fearful that God was going to bring shame into the light, fearful that God will forsake me, fearful that God will not be faithful to his word for me, fearful that I was not good enough for God, fearful that God does not love me, fearful that God will not do for me that which he has done for others, fearful that God would limit his mercy and grace towards me, fearful that I was going to be rejected, fearful of being condemned by God, and fears that did nothing but doubt God. I saw that it was impossible for any of these unclean spirits to act in any other nature than what its name was. In other words, the spirit of fear that believes that God is going to reject it, to those who have surrendered their hearts to believe that its lying counsel is right and true, then they have no choice but to be in bondage to the belief that God is going to reject them also. As the spirit is, so is the nature of the soul that believes it, for they are one in agreement. I was so thankful to be under his grace, and the Spirit of the Lord opened my understanding so that I could see that through all of these spirits of fear were of different natures. They all had the same purpose, to haunt me with troubling and tormenting thoughts. Because each spirit had a different nature, they could only haunt me when a situation or circumstance arose that agreed with their nature. That is, the fear of heights could only trouble and torment a man when he was in a high place. For him to hunt that man had to first believe that its counsels were right and true. The fear of man could only trouble a man when a circumstance or situation arose where that man perceived some kind of threat that might come against him from other men. I saw that each fear was limited to where he could only trouble or torment a man, and when the circumstance or situation arose that matched that spirit's nature, of course, a man first had to believe that the counsels of these unclean spirits were right before he could believe them. Once a man believed any of their counsels, then these spirits could be seen by the fruits of their works that were manifested in either stress or despair, or uncertainty, or confusion, terror, unwillingness, dread, hesitation, fret, insecurity, evil suspicions, distress, rebellion, self-condemnation, worry, hopelessness, impatience, panic, disappointments, anxiety, as well as in the thoughts that doubt God, that do not believe God and distrust God. I then saw another group of spirits that did not appear in the same form as any of these spirits of fear, but I perceived that they were somehow of another, or they were all related. When these spirits were present, they were just as troubling to a man's thoughts as any of these spirits that fear were, because when they are present in man's thoughts, there is then no peace or rest in that man's mind. These unclean spirits were named envy, contention, bitterness, covetousness, malice, depression, jealousy, unforgiveness, confusion, rage, frustration, vengefulness, strife, hatred, lust, and anger. It was here that for the first time I began to understand why the Lord says that death rules over the thoughts of the carnal mind. Up until this time, I just thought the death of the carnal mind only had to do with man's separation from God. I could see that the very nature of these troubling and miserable and tormenting thoughts were death itself. I even saw that if a man had no fear of dying, then he would never be troubled with any worries or stress about dying. I could now see that there was no peace or life in any of the counsels that these spirits haunted the castle of my heart. The Lord also opened my eyes to see that death is not only a separation from God, but it is also this actual thinking that is separate from God's thoughts. I then saw two more spirits that seemed to travel side by side, working hand in hand with each other to haunt my castle. One had the words, "What if?" written across his chest area, and the other had the words, "Worst case scenario" written on his chest. I can only speak for myself in saying that I clearly recognized both of these spirits and how they had infected my thinking. I saw how the what if seemed to always lead me into the hands of the worst case scenario spirit. The what if spirit will come and try to paint many pictures in my thinking that try to dictate to me how I should fearfully respond or react to situations or circumstances before any of these events even happen. If I've ever met a false prophet, then my eyes were opened to see how these two spirits were nothing but false prophets, sent to trouble and torment with their fears about events before they even happen. I then said, "Lord, now I see how it was these two spirits that many times in my past have had me tossing and turning in my bed. I also see that how they have kept me awake most of the night with thoughts of stress, anxiety, and worry. Now, Lord, I see that all of these thoughts are birthed out of the prophecies that come with the what if or worst case scenario spirits in my imaginations. Is it any wonder that you said, 'First, cleanse the inward part of the house, that it may be clean on the outside also'? No wonder your word has instructed us to take no thought for tomorrow. So many of the thoughts about tomorrow do nothing but open the door for these two spirits to come in now to trouble and torment us about tomorrow. As I thought more on how much these two unclean spirits have corrupted so much of my thinking, the Spirit of the Lord then quickened to me that which is written in Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Then the Lord said, "My word is true. This is the only prophecy that you need to be mindful of. No matter how bad the circumstance or situation looks, I am well able to bring forth good out of every one of them. I can part the seas, I can calm the winds, or I can cast out your fears. If you will take up your cross and die to the words of these two unclean spirits, declaring before me that none of their counsels is the right way for you to follow after, then I will come and redeem you from these haunting spirits. I will send forth the spirit of life that will set you free from the death that troubles and torments the carnal mind. If you will disown these lies and no longer esteem their words to be right and true, then I will redeem the what ifs and worst case scenarios, where all things will work together for good. Then the Lord said to me, and no matter the situation or circumstance that I could be in, that there's only one worst case scenario that's true, and that is I could lose him. When the Lord finished speaking these words to me, the Spirit of the Lord brought back into my remembrance an instance that happened about 20 years ago concerning my father-in-law. My wife had gotten a phone call whereby she was informed that her dad had just been administered to the hospital in very serious condition. Before my wife left to drive the 75 miles to the hospital, she prayed and acknowledged the Lord and asked for him to direct her. The Lord spoke to her and said, "Do not fear their fears or dread their dreads." This was the first time that the Lord had ever spoken anything to either my wife or I concerning any fears or dreads. And we do not even know at that moment that the word of this instruction was also scriptural. My wife arrived at the hospital and several of her aunts and uncles were there. And they all, including the doctors that were also there, were filled with nothing but fear and dread about my father-in-law's condition. In fact, every word that my wife had spoken in that hospital room was filled with nothing but fear and dread. So much so that she also began to be overcome by their words, and she began to fearfully dread what her father's outcome might be. But then the Spirit of the Lord brought back into her remembrance the word that had been spoken to her. She then in return went down to the hospital chapel and began to pray. She just asked the Lord to help her not believe any more of these fears and dreads. She asked the Lord to deliver her from the fears and dreads that she had begun to believe. The Lord came to her and took away from her all of these fears and dreads, and then filled her with his peace that passes all understanding. He calmed the storm of fears and dreads that had been strongly blowing in the thoughts of her mind. After this, she went back to her father's room. Suddenly, she felt like a complete stranger or alien there because she no longer was being affected or afflicted by any of the fears and dreads that were being spoken there. To make a long story short, contrary to the words that these spirits of fear had been prophesying about the future health of my father-in-law, none of them came to pass. He recovered and was soon discharged from the hospital and went home. One thing that we have observed in other instances is that when the Lord delivers you from these fears or dreads, then those that are still subject to these unclean spirits do not know how to interpret you in the times that distress men. That is, they cannot understand why you are not worried or stressed out as they are. In fact, some have even gotten angry because this peace of God is so alien and strange to them that this peace of mind appears to them as if you do not care. We have certainly been the recipients of some evil looks that try to intimidate us into believing their fears and dreads. Looks like that greatly resembled the countenance I saw on the face of these spirits of dread that appeared as these intimidating bulldogs. I now know that these are those intimidating spirits of dread that would bully us into believing that it is impossible for God to do any good in the situations and circumstances of life that daily confront us. Satan would only have us to focus on the evil that his spirits of dread prophesy unto us, always trying to take the love and the goodness of Abba Father out of the outcome. Wow, talk about a haunted castle. I saw so many types of fears that I wondered if there were any circumstance or situation that a man could face where he would not encounter at least one or more of these fears coming forth to trouble and torment him with some kind of dread or anxiety or uncertainty or worry. Then the Lord said, "Do you believe me now? Do you believe me when I say to you that your thoughts are not my thoughts? Do you think for one moment that I would allow for any of these filthy, vile spirits to enter into my thinking to torment and haunt me? In this fallen world of darkness, death rules over the carnal thoughts of men through deceit. Death only rules in the darkness where fears and dreads are believed to be right and true. For death is the reality of darkness. It is not possible for any of these thoughts to dwell in my kingdom, because the darkness cannot dwell where the light of life reigns, neither now or forever. Can death reign with life? Says the Lord." I was still meditating on these things when the Lord spoke to me and said, "Mitt, do you want to see how well Satan has deceived you?" "Yes, Lord. Please show me if that is what is going to set me free from all of these troubling fears and dread." Then the Lord asked, "Who is guarding and defending the treasures in your castle? Is it not your pride and your self-justification?" With a sudden shock of realization and feeling extremely foolish, I answered, "I suppose I am, Lord." Then the Lord said, "Well, this is how Satan has deceived you, in that he has you guarding and defending the very fears and dread that have been oppressing you. Never forget that I have told you that nothing could have power over you unless you first believe it to be right and true. Neither Satan nor any of these haunting spirits could have power to take the castle of your heart by force. It is for this reason they disguise their words so that they appear as counsels that can be received to help or to guide you. Otherwise, they could not gain entrance into the treasury of your heart or make your mind their dwelling place. Neither Satan nor any of these spirits of fear and dread have any power themselves, but they receive power the moment their words are received and believed. Then, once they have gained entrance, they go to work to haunt a man in his thoughts with anxiety, confusion, worry, loneliness, uncertainty, strife, unforgiveness, bitterness, stress, hatred, depression, envy, and every other miserable thought that robs you of the peace and life that I have created man to be partakers of. I have given you power that the world does not have, and that is the power not to believe that which seeks to oppress you. If you do not choose to use this power, then the force of darkness will laugh and mock at you when they deceive you with the lies that haunt you. Would you account a man to be wise or to be foolish, who defends and protects the very counsels that torment and oppress him? And I asked the Lord the only other question that I could think to ask at that moment. Lord, what can I do now about all these fears and dreads? The Lord then answered and said, I am standing and knocking at the door of your heart. And unless you are first willing to open the door and ask for me to come in, then I will not be able to enter in. I have not come to the door of your heart to fight against your pride or to force myself in. I will never force myself upon you or any man. But if you humble yourself and open the door of your heart, asking for me to come in, then I'll come in. I am the light of the world. I am the light that reveals the hidden things of darkness and the secret counsels of the heart. I see the thoughts of the heart with all of its intents and purposes. I stand at the door of your heart, willing and ready to come in to set you free from all these lying spirits that have oppressed and tormented you. I am willing to come in and be the truth of what you believe, for I am the truth that makes you free. I am the truth that casts out lies. I am the love that casts out fear. I have showed to you how these fears and dreads have come only to haunt you, to destroy and rob you of the abundant life that I desire for all of you to be partakers of. My love is standing at the door of your heart, ready to fill you with the joy and with the peace that is able to rule over your heart. I love you, and if you ask for me to come in, then my love will come in to judge and to cast out all of these fears. I am standing at the door of your heart, ready to fill your treasuries with the blessings and riches of abundant life. I am ready to make your castle a beautiful castle, inside and out. I am the Lord your God, and I alone am able to be worshipped and served. How can you call me Lord and then bow your knee to serve the counsels of these unclean spirits? My love is jealous for you, and my love yearns for you to allow me to cast out these lying spirits that oppress and haunt you. I am asking you to trust me, to open your heart to me. Allow me to come in. I am asking you not to surrender your heart any longer to any of these fears and dreads, to account any of their lies to be true or right. I am here to cleanse and sanctify this haunted castle, to cast out all of these filthy and unclean spirits. I am here to tear down this haunted castle, this temple full of unclean and false idols. I am here to tear down this temple that has been built on the lies that you have believed. I am here to build me a glorious temple that I will fill with all of the riches of life. I have given to you the power that enables you to choose what you are going to believe. Will you choose me? Will you choose the love that is able to cast out all your fears? Will you have the righteousness of my love to rule over your heart and mind? Or will you continue to choose to allow these fears and dreads to be the righteousness that you live by? Will you have peace, or will you have torment to rule in your heart? As darkness cannot have any fellowship with light, neither can death have any fellowship with life. So I give to you this day a choice between this life and death, blessing and cursing. You choose who you are going to open the door of your heart to. Whether it be my love that loves you or the fears and dreads that oppress and haunt you, I am standing at the door of your castle and I am knocking. Will you choose to let me in? That is all that I am asking you to do. And the Spirit of the Lord quickened to me that which is written in 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. With this word I knew that it would be vain for me to try and discern the fears of my own heart, as though I could prove to God that I am able to cast out these fears and dreads that have been haunting me. So I surrendered to the Lord and simply stood before the Lord, and acknowledge to him that I choose life and blessings. Lord, is it really that simple? That all that you are asking for me to do is to choose? And I asked for him to come in and do whatever he needed to do so that life and peace will rule over my heart and mind. This was a really easy choice for me to make, seeing that, left alone to myself, I had freely chosen to allow many fears and dreads to enter into the treasury of my heart. I had chosen my own poison to haunt me. If that was not shameful enough for me to see, then seeing that I was also allowing for my pride to defend and protect my own poison was doubly foolish. Surely, the wisdom of man is foolishness in the sight of God.